Alright guys, we're going to check out pattern number 10. This is personally one of my favorite ones. I just really like kind of the gradients in this one. Probably a little bit easier than the previous one I just recorded, pattern 7. A couple cool tools we're going to see here and kind of how to get these gradients to work. And the actual repeating pattern itself isn't too difficult, and it probably looks harder than it really is, but let's try to knock this one out. Now the initial shape we're going to use is going to be the waveform, and we've used this quite a few times in some of these other videos, but let's just kind of bring that noise and pattern down, really just to get it so it kind of turns to a solid shape. We only need one peak, so let's put this down to one wave. I'm just going to pull the size max down until it's maybe a little closer. Let me just check that out again. That's probably about right. And if we kind of zoom and look at the edge, sort of jagged, we can clean it up by bumping up those samples. That definitely helps. Okay, and then from there, I think what we're going to do is just put a transform on it, turn it 90 degrees so it's at least facing vertically, just like the reference. And then just in case it runs into any problems, I don't want this to be right up against the border. So I'm going to also do a shift, command, click in the corner, just to scale that down ever so slightly. And you can see it is trying to repeat. So let's also, on that transform node, go into the tiling, set it to absolute, and turn off tiling altogether. That seems like a pretty good starting point. Now, the main thing we want to do with this guy is not really worry so much about the gradient. That is not too difficult. Really the more challenging part is getting the creases to kind of cut into this thing, so we kind of have these individual sort of curved, almost like edge detects. Now to do this, I'm going to try to get the thicker border first, and I know it's black, but we're actually going to kind of keep it white for now. We're going to do a edge detect. Bring that down. You know what? Actually, I am going to leave it black. I take that back. Let's leave this black. And I think we can kind of get this to work just like this. Now, to kind of get these other pieces, if you just look at the reference, you'll notice that the curve right here is really similar to the curvature on the outside, and they're all kind of like that. So this means, I think if we use a very similar version of this over and over again, I can kind of subtract that from these other pieces. So let's try this out. I'm just going to move this over a little bit. I'm going to take the same transform from here. We're going to have this go into a different transform because I need to make it a little smaller and just move it around. And on this transform, we are also going to do an edge detect. We're going to bring the roundness down. The width on this guy, I think I am going to leave it a little thinner because it does seem thinner than that one. Let's see what I have this at. That is a 3. That's 2. That might be okay. We'll find out. Now, on from here, what I should be able to do is on this transform node, is if I move it, we should see these two interacting with each other. So I'm going to make a blend. Come down here. Let's take this guy, put it into the foreground. So I have these two different shapes now mixing. And we're going to put the blend to min or multiply. They're both going to do a very, very similar effect. We're going to do min. Now you'll notice it got pretty thick because this guy right here is dominating the result. But if I go to the transform on this other kind of thinner edge detect, if I move it down, look what happens. So you can see kind of where we're going with this. We're trying to create those sort of separate curved pieces. So this one needs to come down a little bit, and then it kind of curves in a little more. So I think as I bring it down, I also want to hold Command Shift and just scale this in, maybe go up just a little more. Let me just double check that. That needs to go up in scale. All right, so I'm going to zoom in here, and we're going to pinch this up just a little more because I'm trying to get that curved part on the outside to look right. Okay, let's scale it down ever so slightly here. Just kind of playing around with the scale and position. I think that looks about right. Now it is sort of overlapping down here. So let me just pull that down just a little bit. Now the good thing is there's an easy way to kind of prevent this from, so let's say actually I did want it to curve in. You can see how it's like kind of overlapping back in on itself. I probably could avoid that, but I think I'm going to have it go down a little bit. And if I needed to, I could slice off this guy like midway down, if it just to prevent it from like curving inward and thickening up that line a little bit too much. You can see it is doing that down here. So let me try slicing this off just to prevent that from happening, because that's probably going to happen over and over again. All right, I want to cut it right there. So let's do a, let's see here, let's do a transform. There actually is a trick with a blend. I don't know if it's going to work. Let me try this. I'm going to have it go into a blend foreground, and I'm not blending it, but there's actually like a crop on here, and I want to see if this is going to actually work. Yeah, it actually will work. It's cutting off right there. You see how it's turning black? I bet what I can do, and I haven't actually tried this yet, so I'm kind of freestyling this one, but I'm putting it into a blend just so I can use the crop on the bottom, and it needs a background. So I wonder if I did a shape and just left it white, what happens if that's the background? Oh, look at that. This is going to work. This is kind of cool. All right. Now what I can do here is, since this is kind of cutting into it, if I go to the blend and if I move the crop, that bottom, you can see I'm just slicing that shape off. So if I look at it where it merges in, moving the crop is kind of controlling where that gets cut off. And you really do have to have this white going in as a background, because if I didn't have that, see how it molts and it's slicing off that whole bottom part of the image? We don't want that. So this has kind of worked out quite well. I like that. All right, let's repeat this again. Now, the good thing is we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel here. We've already got this whole pipeline working. So let's take this whole chunk, Command D, make a new section. We're going to move that down here. And let's do another blend immediately. Connect it into it. We're just going to move that down. And, okay, we're going to put this to Molt or Min, just like the other one. Take the transform, move it down. Okay, let me just look at the reference again. So I need one here, curving in just, so it's really just curving down and in more and more. So it's kind of just repeating this over and over. So I got to try to pull this in, move that up, maybe shift that down very slightly. I don't know if we're going to get this 100% accurate, but we're going to try. Might need to curve in just a bit more. So I think this has to come up a little more than that. Now, I probably have the position right. You can see where this one's getting sliced a little bit. The good thing is, because this is on its own blend, I can just move that crop down to kind of allow that to go a little bit farther downward. All right, so there's two. I think that's okay. Might need to move this guy down just a tiny bit more. Okay, let's do this again. So select everything, Command D. Here's another one, and it's repeating it one more time. So let's move this guy. Now the result of this gets put in the background. This is the new foreground. And again, go in here, put it to Min. And we're just repeating it. So let's go down. I'm just holding Shift so I can kind of move down straight. How many guys we have total? I need 1, 2, 3. So just 4. So now that we got this guy, let's go right there. This one I'm going to have to fix that blend. That crop is really taking off way too much. All right, let's just put that down. That way I can kind of see more of it, and then I can kind of scale this up. So I think with this one, I want it maybe about like that. I think that second one might be a tiny bit off. Yeah, that's pretty close. We'll leave it. I might have to go back to this other guy, but let me just go to the blend and let's fix that crop. Right there. And transform. This thing has to come up just a little more here. Oop. Grab the bottom. There we go. I just need that to curve just a bit more. And we'll just shift that down very slightly. Okay. Go to the blend. And let's move that down. And I think this is the last one we need here. So once again, select those three nodes. Command D. Get our duplicate. Take this guy. Make that going into another blend. This one goes into it. Put it to our min blend mode. Okay, set to min. And this should be the last one. So I'm going to move that down somewhere right around there. And let's just kind of move this crop much farther up just so it's not cutting off as much. That way I can kind of get this guy positioned right. So shift command, kind of pinching in those sides. We're going to move that up to get a little more curvature. Put that in just a bit more. I think that looks decent. Yeah. I think it's close enough where this would probably work. I think we're going to go with that. All right, let's go to the blend and then just fix that crop. Excellent. So that feels pretty good. Interesting little way to build that. But you can see again how you can get really creative inside of Designer and kind of how you kind of use these shapes to molt and blend and taking the same shape and scaling it. That's kind of really why I like this software so much, is it just gives you, it's almost like playing in a sandbox where there's so many just creative ways to come up with these different shapes. And we're, of course, barely scratching the surface with the software. Now, I am missing that line cutting down the middle, which is about the same thickness. That should be relatively easy. So we're just going to make a shape node somewhere over here. And let's scale in the X really thin, somewhere, something like that. And if I do a subtraction, we should be able to cut that out. So this is going to go to the background. That's my foreground. Click on the blend. We're going to say subtract that white line from it. You can see, because it's already centered, because the shape defaults to being centered, that appears to be pretty good. Oh, look what's happening here, though. So the shape does not understand it's supposed to be within the boundaries of that guy. Now, this may not be an issue, because when they're all tiled together, that line kind of looks like it just sort of cuts through there to the next one. So even though this does look a little weird doing that, I bet this is not going to even amount to anything. So I'm going to leave it. If we need to fix it later, we can do that. Let's try to tile this thing real quick, just to make sure this even works. All right, so that needs to be cut out there. Okay. I think to get the gradient, I kind of want to remove the white. That's kind of a big issue. And I need to get these gradients in here. Now, to do this, we're probably going to have to use some type of flood fill. So I'm going to click on the blend. We're going to use a flood fill node, which I've used in a couple different videos. It's really cool. And the flood fill is then going to go into its flood fill gradient. Now, the flood fill gradient is kind of interesting. You can see there's a bunch of different connections on this guy. Actually, it might be grayscale, not gradient. I might have the wrong one. Wait a second. Yeah, I think I had the wrong one. Sorry. Make a flood fill to grayscale. I get these guys mixed up a lot. Now, it's not doing anything yet, but what you need to do is have an input on the grayscale. So if I type in something like linear, I'm making just a linear gradient 1. Connect this into the grayscale input. Look what's happened. So you can see how it's kind of giving us that variation. So I'm going to click on this, use levels, go back here, click on the levels, and then we're going to just kind of use these to expand the contrast a little bit, because it's kind of using that gradient to give us the sort of range of value. So it's almost like it's color picking from the different points and then assigning that to those individual sections of that leaf pattern. And I think that's probably already fairly accurate. Might need to be a little brighter, but I think we can probably go with that. Now the only thing I'm kind of missing right now is I have to fix this background issue, because this is going to kind of screw up the way the tile generator works. This should be black, because the tile generator by default is going to add the images together. That gray color, when it adds on the other images, is going to cause a bunch of overlapping problems. It's going to wash out the whole thing. So let's try to fix that real quick. I could probably do that back here just by using one of these initial shapes to subtract this whole area out. Let's grab this guy way back in that initial transform. And I'm going to put that in a blend against this result. So we're going to make a blend node. I'm going to connect this thing way back to the very first transform 2D. This is like the overall shape of that petal, I guess we're trying to create. Okay, now when I put this, because it's covering it, but if I put this to a molt, see how it removes all that stuff on the outside? I think this is what we're going to need here. Now, one small problem is, now that I've done this, if I do my Option Shift, you'll kind of notice how that line is cutting through everything. It looks really messy. So if we do Option Shift to bring up these little extra points, I can click on this guy and just try to redirect this so it's a little cleaner looking in the graph. And let's do this one more time. So we're going to do that. Make a second point. If I can click on it, there we go. And let's just keep that right there. And then this guy, I guess we can kind of move that down here and maybe take that point and this point and then just move them up so it goes kind of above it. Not really a big deal. It's just sort of an organization thing, but that looks a little cleaner. All right, let's try this guy out with the tile generator. So we're going to click on this tile generator. This needs to go in the pattern input. We're going to say use image input. Let's check it out. And I think it's a 4x4, but let's just double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Vertically 1, 2, 3, 4, even though they are staggered. So this is a pretty common one we've done in some of the other videos. So we're going to do 4x4. We have to come down here until we get to the position. Do a 50% offset. So just put it to 0.5 exactly. Now we want to scale this up. So we're going to find the scale right above it, boost this up quite a bit. You can see it's probably not quite big enough, but we can go above that number. I'm just going to type in 3. Now it's going to overshoot it, but let's just pull that back. Look at that. That is probably a very close match. Let's just compare that to the reference. Oh yeah, we got very close. So if I had to kind of critique this thing, like if I was going to spend a little bit more time refining it, I think that my position on some of those little edge detects, when I was kind of scaling them around with that transform, they're not exactly right. And this bottom one probably could be a little darker, so I can go back to that levels I set up to kind of color correct that gradient. That might be a good idea. But overall, I think we do have the general pattern in place. It might need just another 5 or so minutes to tweak it, but there you go. So it looks really cool when you tile this one. So that might be a kind of an interesting one for you guys to try out. But anyway, that is how we do pattern number 10.